Vision without traction is hallucination, as Gino Wickman tells us. And so if you've got great ideas and you know what you want to accomplish, but you don't have the traction behind it, it's almost as though it doesn't really matter, right? We've got to make it real. The idea is to take a dream and make it real.
Welcome to Unlocking Moves, where we try to cover those key pivotal moments or decision points that really change the trajectory in the lives of successful entrepreneurs and leaders. And I want to hear stories because I think we learn best from stories. And I want to hear their gory stories, not just their glory stories, because as I like to say, the bigger the shit show, the bigger the lesson. I've got a special guest for you on today's Unlocking Moves because I met with Kelly Knight 4 years ago on a podcast, but a lot has changed since then. And it was one of our most popular episodes. And the question is, why? We're going to get into that and more. But before we do, Kelly, I've got a question. I like to throw my guests off balance, keep them on their toes, keep my audience on their toes with a question. Are you ready for this?
I am so ready.
So when we recorded our podcast 4 years ago, you talked about this world-renowned mac and cheese from the Clarkson Union, and you offered to buy anyone who was listening to the podcast mac and cheese when they came and visited you in Clarkson. The question is, how many people took you up on that offer?
You know, I did in fact offer that, and not a single person has shown up here in Clarkston. So I'm still waiting.
Well,
I'll tell you, by somebody.
I'll tell you this. My nephew is getting married in Clinton Township at the end of the summer, which is only 40 minutes per Google Maps away from Clarkson. So you're going to buy me and whoever I bring with me mac and cheese at the Clarkson Union.
I am absolutely going to do that. Cannot wait. I would love to see you in person, get a real in-person hug and share a great meal together.
Let's count on it. Let's count on it. And the only reason I'm redoing this podcast is because I wanted free mac and cheese. That's the only reason we're doing this.
Well, you know, I mean, it sounds like a good deal to me.
Hey, as you could tell, my guest today is Kelly Knight. She is the integrator for EOS Worldwide. She's been in that role since 2016. She's a Michigan grad and an expert builder of teams. She's previously spent 20 years in the financial services industry, and she was managing and leading dynamic organizations then. And I want to really unpack all of her background and where she is and how she is as an integrator for EOS Worldwide. I can't wait to dive back in with Kelly Knight. Kelly, thanks so much for being my guest on Unlocking Moves.
Kurt, thanks for having me back. It feels like it was not 4 years ago that we had a conversation, and just glad to be back together.
Well, it sure seems like only yesterday, and it seems like a lifetime away because a lot has obviously changed. We recorded in December, if I remember correctly, of 2020. We had a great conversation. It was one of our, as I mentioned before, one of our most viewed podcasts. And in the interim, a lot has changed. You guys have obviously changed your business model at EOS, and you're experiencing amazing growth, as we talked about before. And you wrote a book. I wrote a book. We're going to get into that and more. So I'm excited to go.
I am too. Let's do this.
So, hey, let's start with some basics. I know most of our audience knows many of these things, but let's cover some basics for those of the audience who aren't familiar with EOS. EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. There's a lot that goes into that. It's from Gino Wickman's book, Traction. There's another amazing book, which I happen to have right here, ready to show off to the audience, Traction. And then another book in that series was Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman and Mark Winters, which changed my life. We can get into that as well. But talk to me, what is EOS? What is Integrator? What is Implementer? What is Visionary?
Well, that's a lot baked in there, but yes, EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. As you said, it's a simple, practical set of tools and a process that help entrepreneurs and their leadership teams get everything that they want from their business. That's it at the core. And we help teams get vision, traction, and healthy out of their organization. And at the end of the day, we want people to live their EOS life, which is doing what you love with people you love, making a huge difference, being compensated appropriately with time to pursue other passions. So that is the thing that we believe at the end of the day is sort of the cherry on top of what EOS delivers to entrepreneurs, their leadership teams. And I happen to believe everybody deserves that. Everybody on a team running on EOS deserves to live their EOS life. So that's what EOS is.
Hey, let's pause there because there's so
Yeah.
much, as you said, there's a lot there. So a couple of things I heard was EOS life, so you can live the life that you envision or whatever. I know with visionaries, many of the ones that we work with they want to do what they do best and what they enjoy doing. And what you're about to talk about next, I think, is the integrator. How does the integrator help said visionary achieve those goals? And then separately, integrators like to execute the vision of the visionaries, and there are people who are really good at that and love doing that. So that's where I think a lot of visionaries don't understand that people actually love doing the kind of work that integrators do.
Yes, indeed. While it may seem crazy to some visionaries that there is someone who loves that work, it's absolutely true. There, as it says in Rocket Fuel, there's sort of a 4-to-1 ratio, which is that for, every 4 visionaries, there's one integrator out there. And to make matters sometimes a little bit more complex, it's finding the right fit for you, the right fit integrator for you and your business. Because as Mark Winters teaches us, it's a 3-part puzzle: the visionary, the integrator, and the business. And they all have to fit harmoniously, they have to fit properly, or it just doesn't work. So, an integrator is really the yin to the yang of the visionary. The visionary is the person who, of course, has the big ideas and the big relationships and is often responsible for the culture, thinking 1,000 steps ahead about where we're going as an organization and how it really fits into the could be the industry or the world that we live in. Sometimes tinkering in the workshop, like Mark O'Donnell, my business partner, does. He likes to pull some levers and see what makes people smile and do more of that. And the things that don't make people smile, we actually, tweak, hone, or we quit doing that because it doesn't work. And so my role as the integrator is to be that counterpart to Mark O'Donnell. And that's the person who is taking that vision and making it a reality. And so my days are obsessed around leading, managing, and holding accountable the leadership team. They actually report to me. So in an EOS run company, the integrator reports to the visionary, and everybody else on the leadership team reports to the integrator. And so I'm harmoniously integrating the functions of the organization, making sure that there's a constant, steady beat to the business. We're delivering on our promises and our commitments, keeping quality really high, watching the P&L, of course, and just generally getting people unstuck when that may happen, predicting well so that we can actually execute really well and achieve everything that we have on our, what we call a VTO. That's a vision traction organizer, or a simple 2-page business plan.
Man,
More at eosworldwide.com, by the way, guys. So there's so much free material and downloadable tools and all kinds of things there. If you're not familiar with EOS, we'd love to give you some things to think about.
thank you for including that. We'll make sure that's in the call notes or, as well, so we can make sure we point people in the right direction. The things you just laid out sound very dreamy. They sound like, man, if I'm wishful thinking, those are the types of things I think about. Someone to execute my vision, someone to hold people accountable, someone to drive the parts of the business that honestly I probably suck at, and it's not my favorite thing to do. So thank you, and all the other thousands and millions of integrators out there.
Oh, you bet. It's a real joy. I really genuinely love what I do every single day. And so I know that there, for every visionary who's out there, there is your counterpart, that person who really can run with you. And Mark really has a nice analogy when he talks about that. It's sort of a frequency. You think about a dance partner. And so, what does that look like when you're dancing together, and to keep up the same pace so that you're executing and you don't feel stuck or like someone's lagging behind? And so, it's just a matter of really fine tuning who is it that you imagine in your mind's eye that can run like you, but be able to do the things that you're not interested in doing, or frankly, just not very good at. And so, it really is, it sounds like a pipe dream, and it can feel like that, but your partner really does exist out there. There's some patience and some things actually you've written about in your book more recently that I think that in Rocket Fuel are great resources to just contemplate, like, how do you put that down and get it on paper so that you can give it to someone who can help you find that right who. As Dan Sullivan says, it's who, not how. So we've just got to find the right who.
I want to unpack one thing that you said there about the role of the integrator. Um, one of the things you do is you told me is uniting the major functions of the business, driving accountability, and obsessing about organizational clarity. a lot of visionaries have ambiguity in our vision. And so we need that integrator to clarify and define things. One other thing that you said, and it's my favorite definition of what an integrator is. It's super succinct, which is basically executing the vision of the visionary. And that's such a beautiful thing when it works. But let me ask you this. Most people don't dream of being an integrator when they're growing up, and they don't even know what an integrator is. And obviously, it's becoming more and more of a powerful word and a concept here over the last 10 or 15 years. There's no integrator school, although I guess there is now. You guys have created Rocket Fuel University, or I don't know what that's called right now. So perhaps I didn't get the branding right. But when did you learn that you were an integrator, and why did you seek this path?
Well, I did not seek this path. I think the universe led me to it, so to speak. So over many, many years, I came from the financial services industry. And as you said, Kurt, it was not that I went to school for this. I did not imagine myself doing this necessarily. I didn't even know what an integrator was, candidly, until I was interviewing for the seat that I'm now in. Almost 9 years ago. It's been that long. And what I would say is it's definitely different today. I think of myself back 20 years ago. If I had known about the integrator path, maybe I would have pursued it and I would have joined the Integrator Mastery Forum, which is what we call the forum inside of Rocket Fuel, where integrators come together to sharpen the saw and hone their skill set and become a world-class integrator to build the most powerful VI duos on the face of the planet. That's the core focus of Rocket Fuel. But that just did not exist in my 20 years ago self. But what for me occurred was my dad, he's 82 years old. He's amazing. And I grew up with him as a visionary, really showing me. So I grew up with it sort of in my DNA, so to speak. And he would sit with me and show me his vision and plans. And he was very much a visual teacher. And so it was in those very early formative days, being 5 years old, sitting with him at the kitchen table, looking at something that he wanted to build or to do. And I would get lit up about making something a reality. I would get very excited about planning it, doing it, and achieving it. And so I learned that feeling, right? That feeling of achievement and doing something really great with a partner. And so I think just in my very early self, that's what I did know I appreciated. But it took me a long journey to get there, and all the twists and turns of my career in the financial industry, and then eventually making my way here to EOS. I didn't know that all of that experience happened to curate the ability for me to become an integrator. But again, 8, 9 years later, the name or the title or the role or the seat of integrator is much more well known today than it was back when I first joined EOS. So I just stumbled into it, Kurt. Basically, bottom line, if I have to answer it, I just stumbled into it.
Well, I love the story. Thank you for sharing the moments around the dinner table with your father. That sounds so cool, and the fact that you were the early blossoms of you understanding that you're an executor. You like to get things done and like to build plans and make things happen. I think that's beautiful. I had a similar aha moment. For me, it was when I read the book Rocket Fuel, which we talked about before. For me, the key tenets of that book are the concept of the visionary and the integrator, and then the relationship. And for me, I've always felt like I had lots of good ideas, and I had a vision, so to speak, not crazy like an Elon Musk, but enough to be dangerous. I also found there's areas that I struggled. I struggle with managing people. I struggle with being too much of a glass half full guy. I struggle with details. And the book gave me, in my opinion, gave me authority or license to be myself. And I didn't have to be things that I wasn't. And I didn't have to make excuses for not being good with details. It allowed me to partner with somebody who was stronger. And you mentioned your dad, and I mentioned my father in our last podcast. I think it bears repeating. My dad was also had visionary tendencies, but he was very cheap and he wanted to do everything himself. So he became a visionary and integrator, trying to do both, and he struggled. And we see it oftentimes with our clients, and I know you see it with some of yours, where someone's in both seats. And I learned the hard way that where my skills lie, And looking back is where I was able to reflect on my father's struggles with being an entrepreneur, of trying to do everything himself. And so I've been fortunate to have people around me who are very strong with those operational tendencies, or execution partner, I call it, or integrator, to help me fulfill my vision. So I very much appreciate, as I said before, the skills you bring to the table.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's again, you need both. That's the thing. There's no shame in the fact that you maybe didn't feel like you were very good. You actually might have been good at them, but maybe also didn't care to do them. It wasn't a passion or an interest to you. And so the minute that a visionary can realize that and have the readiness, the mindset to let go of the vine and to let someone else come in and take those things over, because that can be hard too. It's sometimes a visionary can actually get to that point and they say, well, now what do I do with myself? Because this is what I've been doing, even though it's not the most favorite thing for me. And so that freedom is what is so important, to completely live 80% of your time, maybe better or more if possible, in that unique ability, the thing that your God-given talent that you're meant to be here on earth to do. Because the more that visionaries are able to live in that space, and someone else like the integrator can come in and really kind of take over all those things that are burdensome, time consuming, frustrating, irritating, keeping you from living your EOS life, you're able to blossom and to take your company to new heights by being in your unique ability. So I know that that can be a process. Every organization has a life cycle to it. And so it's just getting that mindset when you're ready to find that right partner. And, vision without traction is hallucination, as Gina Wickman tells us. And so if you've got great ideas and you know what you want to accomplish, but you don't have the traction behind it, it's almost as though it doesn't really matter, right? We've got to make it real. The idea is to take a dream and make it real.
I'll tell you what, that last part resonated with me a lot, because before I had the integrator, or an operation partner, somebody who was my peer, helping me execute, we were like the 5-year-old soccer team. Kurt would have an idea, and I would, tell everybody we're going to do it, and then people would charge in that direction. And then the next week, I'd come up with another idea, and they'd all charge in the other direction. They're all kind of following the ball as a team, and we were not getting
Yeah.
things done. We were not executing. I was frustrated, and I blamed them. And the reality is, it was me who was causing a lot of the challenge by not having a plan and a roadmap and keeping people focused. So,
Mhm. Well, and so what's interesting about your story is I would just flip it and say, your team loves you, loved you, loves you today. You're part of the culture. Everybody wants to be connected to the visionary because it's exciting and we're attached. We're sharing the vision of where we're going together. So it's really important on teams that even when an integrator comes in, that it doesn't remove the relational component that a visionary has with the team, because that connection is very, very important in harnessing human energy. So a visionary has a role in that harnessing of human energy, and the integrator has a complementary way of harnessing that human energy to get results. The integrator just does it on a more granular level to make sure that we're looking at the individuals. For instance, I have 4 members of the leadership team that report to me, all 4 of them very different, very incredibly talented humans, but they're motivated and incentivized in very different ways. And so the integrator gets into the mindset of those that report to them and really knows sort of what are the things that I can do to support them, to give them the resources that they need, to encourage them, to inspire them, and to hold them accountable. And again, knowing how to do that is an art. It's as much science, the tools and the resources that are in EOS, you need that. And it's the natural DNA of you being who you are authentically yourself to be able to do the art of that work of harnessing human energy. So I just go back to your story, is give yourself some credit that you have a very important role. You always will in that. And you just need the yin to the yang again. That just helps complement the pieces of that harnessing of human energy that are just not your favorite.
let's talk about that for a second, because that seems to be one of the biggest, I'll say, struggles. I'm not sure if that's the right word, for visionaries when they do bring on, especially their first integrator. That
Mhm.
balance between giving the integrator the autonomy to manage, lead the
Mhm.
entire team, and have you continue to have a voice where you're not completely off to the, out to pasture, so to speak, And you're also not getting in the way of the integrator doing their job. Tell me a little bit about that balance. How should we look at that as visionaries, or in my world of consulting or working with folks in that?
Sure. So I would simply say for anyone who's bringing in a new integrator, whether it's your first integrator or whether maybe you've had several of them for whatever reason, you've outgrown them or they moved on or whatnot, the most important thing is to get on the same page, to be really clear about, through the interview process. Of course, you're going to be talking about your vision, what your organization is all about, what is your core focus, your core target, your marketing strategy, your 3-year picture. All of those really important components will get talked about early in the vetting process. But sometimes we think, well, we said it 1 or 2 or 3 times, and so the integrator will get it as soon as they start and can just run independently on their own. And I think that there's just a lot of this go slow to go fast component that creates a successful trajectory for the relationship and for the success of the organization. So I would just encourage visionaries to be a little patient up front, to create an onboarding and transition plan, to make sure that we're getting out of your head a lot of history. Where have you been? How has it informed where you are? How does it inform your thinking about where you want to go with the organization and why? And have a lot of really great, rich, deep conversations with one another, probably more than a visionary thinks is required, because an integrator is often a high fact finder, more follow through kind of person. So they have the why questions or how come, and to have the luxury of that opportunity to get to know one another personally and professionally. Don't shortchange the personal side either, because the more that you know holistically who it is that's working with you, the better. So that really being thoughtful about that onboarding process and that connection is important. And then establishing same page meetings at whatever level of frequency works for you to make the relationship work is also very important. So Mark and I have a same page meeting. It's every single Monday for 90 minutes. And once a month, we have a half day together. And that's just what works for us. That's not what everybody should do. That's just what works for us. And so just lean in intuitively and instinctually to understand kind of what's working in your relationship and what's not working. The other component is being really open and honest. So to make sure that you have the right balance in those same page meetings and maybe even on a daily basis, however often it is that you're talking, is just really being completely candid about what's going on in the business. And even to your point about the team, how do you get that? How do you get that worked out? Who does what with the roles within the seats is just to be completely candid. And sometimes I will coach integrators who feel like they want to be really control and commanding of their visionary. And I say, what's the harm in letting them have the opportunity to talk? Even if some of those ideas, maybe you've got a visionary who has 1,000 ideas in a given day, give them the opportunity to talk about it, but create a way of harnessing the very best ideas and creating a timetable for those that are so good that they're worth implementing. But shutting down visionaries, I guess my recommendation to integrators who may be listening and also to inspire visionaries is just to realize that that's your visionaries' unique ability, God-given talent, and that it's part of our role. And hopefully you want to listen to your visionary because you are that excited about the things that he or she can come up with. So those are some ideas that I have for you, is try not to control one another. So I started with the don't try to like overly manage your visionary. To be as open as you possibly can, but also be direct and honest. And then for visionaries is come up with what feels good for letting go of the vine. And some things may come sooner than others, and be prepared for a strong-willed integrator to push back.
Well, that relationship is so important. Getting off on the right foot, as you said, with an onboarding plan, having a good communication plan is so important. And for visionaries, it's going to feel like a lot. Like, why do we have to meet so much once a week? Oh my gosh, 90 minutes. But if you don't, if you're not on the same page, you're eventually going to get off balance and you're going to get frustrated. And then that's where things start teetering. I think it usually comes down to three things. And it's some of the same things you said: trust, respect, and communication. We've got those three things. We can accomplish anything as long as we can trust each other and respect each other and communicate about differences. So
Mhm.
I love what you're saying. I want to talk a little bit about some of the struggles that visionaries often have, and I want to start tying it into one of your favorite topics, which is people. And so I was going to ask you about about management. And, visionaries often struggle with managing people. That's, I think, table stakes. We've covered it a little bit, but let's talk about recruiting people, because a lot of visionaries think, "Oh, I'm great at hiring. I can just hire by my gut, and I just know." And then a few years later, they're frustrated because they keep cycling through people, and they people don't work. So I want to ask you: do you agree that visionaries maybe not suck, but struggle with hiring good people? And then let's get into why.
I think visionaries can be accused of that, and sometimes it's true in a sense that visionaries tend to like a lot of people. They love people. That's part of what's is their gift, right? Because they're big relationships people. So when you put a candidate in front of them who is showing their best selves, as we all try to do in an interview process, it's often that they'll like, I like all of them. They're all really, they're all great. And so yet while that can't possibly be true, like we can't hire everyone that we'd like, there needs to be a stronger vetting process to it. I really do like the perspective of visionaries because you will get from a visionary who is part of the interview process. And by the way, I include Mark O'Donnell in that when we've got really key hires because I do want his take on what were some maybe unique or different things that you picked up on that I would not have picked up on? And that definitely helps as we're assessing great candidates. So I would say we have to be careful with that. I wouldn't say I would exclusively have only a visionary hire a member to the team, but there's an important role that visionaries can play with key hires, maybe sometimes it's sales and marketing seats, certainly someone on the leadership team. Or maybe there's a business development person or a partnerships person that might be really important for that visionary to also feel like they can work with that person because certain seats might collaborate more with a visionary and you want to make sure that there's a natural chemistry there and that we're not going to end up in a situation where there's not great, again, chemistry and likability and ability to work through issues and things like that.
If you're just joining us on Unlocking Moves, today's episode is brought to you as usual by HireBetter, the strategic talent partner for growth-minded entrepreneurs everywhere. So one of the things you said was about the liking people, which is absolutely true, and I think that does impact my ability to hire. The other
Mhm.
thing that I see a lot is visionaries are typically salespeople at heart. They're selling a vision, selling a product, selling a service,
Right.
selling whatever.
Mhm.
And so what I've found, visionaries will come out of a meeting and say, "Oh, it's great. I loved this person. It was an amazing discussion." And then we talk to the candidate and they're like, "Well, I got two words in edgewise because the CEO was talking the whole time." And I realize visionaries love to talk. And so we tell the story and everything sounds great. We don't leave enough room to learn from or hear from or ask the candidate. Love for you to comment on that. And then maybe the deeper
Yeah.
question is, what advice would you give to a visionary who's hiring their first integrator? They don't have that level of defense for an integrator to help them at the hiring process. What do you recommend as far as a way to make that happen?
Sure. Sure. So I'll speak from personal experience and current state. So Mark and I, well, for instance, last year, we actually changed over 3/4 of our leadership team. 3 out of 4 members changed just because the life cycle of the organization. And so in that vetting process, uh, Mark did not do interviews on his own. It was done in combination with me or someone else on our leadership team as we were going through that process. So, when you set it up like that, it's nice to set out with obviously a set of questions that you may want to ask that are culture related. Those often will be the visionaries to talk through vision and culture. And also, we will have questions related to 6 key components, which is part of EOS too. So, vision, people, process, data, issues, traction, right? So we've got questions related to that. And so Mark and I will sort of divide them up. And here's the questions that I'd like to field, and here's the 3 that you'll do. And we treat that as a partnership, no different than we treat pretty much everything else that we do at EOS Worldwide. So I find that harmony works well because the integrator can be there to sort of make sure that the visionary isn't speaking for 80% of the time that's dedicated to what should be a back and forth mutual exchange of an interview process. So that's something that's worked well for us. And then we debrief and we talk about it afterwards. And what did you take from it? What did I take from it? And then we cascade all of that information back to our head of HR, who compiles that as part of the overall process for recruiting. But if you don't have an integrator that can be that, it might be someone else on your leadership team. Maybe you have a highly, like accountable, detail oriented, can stand up to the visionary kind of person. Might be your operations leader or finance leader or someone else on the team. Doesn't even have to be on the leadership team, but someone who can hold that space with the visionary during those interview processes to make sure that it's balanced and that you're able to get from it what both you need as an organization, but what also is needed for the candidate's benefit. Because remember, we want to take care of our candidates too, because we want to be able to give them an opportunity to see if this really is the right organization for them.
I agree with that. And I say that's often tricky with somebody who's going to report to the future integrator. It's hard to hire your future boss. And so I think that's definitely has to be a trusted person on your team. And I often recommend a mentor, advisor, coach, YPO forum mate, or EOS implementer, somebody who knows you and the organization well enough and can help you distill those candidates and help you hire the right person.
100%. And I will clarify that if the said interview is for the integrator seat, you may not do what I just described. But if you're hiring for a different seat on the accountability chart, you could do, I think, what I've described. But I mean, I'll give you an example. So almost 9 years ago, when I was hired to be the integrator of EOS Worldwide, I had Gino Wickman, the founder, creator of EOS. I had his business partner at the time, the existing integrator, Don Tinney. Mike Payton, who was the visionary at the time, who had taken the reins from Gino, and they were interviewing me. But then I had other interviews with other members of the team. By the way, some of them didn't want to hire me for lots of different reasons. One was that I was too polished, was the comment that was given to me, that I was too polished and I wasn't real, raw, and authentic enough, which I honor that, right? Like that's the pull and the push of interviews. And so having a variety of different voices for key seats is really important. And so whatever that looks like to you, to your point, trusted members of your network and your inner circle, doesn't necessarily have to be people inside your own organization, can really be helpful for key seats, especially if you're hiring for the integrator, who's your business partner, really.
Well, I'm glad we clarified that because I love what you're saying. That's exactly our advice. So I'm going to have a segue. It's going to still be around people, but I want to dive into your book. So you mentioned 6 elements of traction: vision, people, data, issues, process, and traction. Most people would argue that most of the other 5 don't happen without the right people. And you wrote a book entitled People, and I'd love to dive into that. The subtitle it's called People, Dare to Build an Intentional Culture. Your co-authors are Mark O'Donnell and CJ Dubé. Did I get that right, pronunciation?
You did. You
All right, let's
did.
go. All right, I have met CJ, and so we'll not admit that I wasn't exactly sure if it was Dubé. And then some of the details behind it, I was reading on. I don't have the book yet, I must admit, but now that I know it's out there, I'm going to go get it. It says, creating an intentional culture isn't optional. It's crucial to ensuring the future of your business and improving the quality of your life. People will teach entrepreneurs how to get their employees on board and on the same page for a culture overhaul. Let's talk about your book. That's exciting. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you. It is very exciting. We are super happy that this is out in the world because we know it, talking with our EOS implementers, which are business coaches, for those of you not familiar with that, business coaches out in the world, the reason why entrepreneurs state that they don't get what they want from their business, it's 82% of them say it's people, some people related issue. It's either retaining great people, finding great people, training great talent. It's some combination of those sorts of things. And so we believe that if you focus on people, all the components matter, all 6 key components matter, none of them to be diminished. But focusing on people first helps you solve all the other issues within inside the organization. when we don't stop and slow down and solve cultural core values and people issues, almost nothing works in an organization. So that's just how important it is. And I've devoted, 25 plus years of my life to really the focus of people within organizations. And I'm infinitely interested in it. I love peeling back the onion of humans and trying to figure out how to really do individuals work and how do teams collectively work and how do they all come together to have a really thriving, healthy organization. And I can't stress enough how important it is. I have talked with many entrepreneurs who will say, I'll get to that one day. I get it. It's kind of a nice to have, but I need to focus on sales right now and hitting my numbers. And so it can be really hard to think in those moments when you're just trying to take care of, paying payroll that, I don't know that I have time to really focus on that right now. But I tell you, while it is hard, it doesn't have to be, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's one of those. But the more that you can focus on that and put energies into it, it pays itself in so many rewards. And it really does positively impact the bottom line, your revenue, your EBITDA, your recurring revenue, if only you can just believe it and trust in it.
Well, I would challenge anybody to find a strong sports organization or business or anything that doesn't have a strong team, and the strong team starts with strong people. So it's such a very valid topic. Can you give us the top three tidbits that we can take home from your book?
Yeah. So one of the things that actually is born out of it started with a conversation with Don Tinney, who again was the original integrator, Gina Wickman's business partner, and something that we talked about at an EOS conference for 3 years in a row. Is the topic of greater good. That term gets thrown around a lot, like, oh, for the greater good, we should do this or that. And what we do is we really boil it out into a very simplistic formula, which is that greater good equals every word of the VTO, which is the 2-page business plan, multiplied by genuine care and concern. And if we just break that piece down, what that really means is that every word of the VTO, well, why don't we just say VTO? Why do we say every word of the VTO? Because when we're talking about our core values, our core focus, our core target, our marketing strategy, 3-year picture. That's the visioning component of the VTO. And quite literally, every word matters, punctuation matters. And so, because it is the singular focused document or tool that is used to convey the vision to get shared by all, SBA, as we talk about in EOS language. And that's what we want, top to bottom. We want the entire organization to be on the same page, to stack hands and say, yes, we are all in on the vision of where we are going. So when we say VTO, we really mean every single word of the VTO. And that should be reviewed every quarter or quarterly to make sure if something's changed in the business, well, let's get it right. Let's make sure every word is there. That focusing tool, which is what a vision traction organizer is that focusing tool for teams, multiplying that by genuine care and concern is what creates a greater good impact or lens on the business. And genuine care and concern cannot be manufactured. It's not a checklist. You need the right people on the team or on the bus, as some call it, and to be able to harness that VTO. And so, as a leader, I will say, please do not become a leader or a manager if you don't genuinely, from your heart, have love for people, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because every day you're going to get a flavor of all of that because we're human and we bring our whole selves every day. And so I would say that's one of the key messages inside the book is we break that down is how do you do that greater good formula with heart-centered leadership? And there's a lot of different tools in there that I really encourage you to go to. By the way, there's a lot that's provided from the book right off of our website, eosworldwide.com/people-book, where you can get all the details on that as well. But I would say, Kurt, just as a theme, abundance mindset versus scarcity and fear And that love component is a big part of what actually creates great culture, genuinely great culture, and how you again channel that human energy to achieve what you want to do. So I invite those of you to go on that website. Mark O'Donnell, by the way, on the landing page for the People book, he does a world-class platinum delivery over video. You can play it of a state of the company. What does a real state of the company look like where you're sharing where you've been, where you are, where you're going? He is absolutely the best at delivering that. I really encourage for visionaries, integrators, or leadership team members, go and visit that because that is worth, the handful of minutes to watch him deliver that. So anyway, that's a little bit about the People book.
Well, I can't wait to dive into that. People are such an important topic, as we talked about. Nothing happens without a great team. And
True.
hey, let's shift gears slightly to my book that came out a couple
Yeah.
years ago. As you mentioned earlier, there are elements of EOS and my journey in the book. I'd love to
Mhm.
ask you if you can recall. I don't know how long it's been since you've read the book, but do you have a favorite character from? It's called "Who's Your Mike," where every different chapter is a different archetype, a different type of employee you'll have on your entrepreneurial journey. Do you have a favorite character?
Well, I'm going to tweak my answer in your question a little bit because it might not be my favorite character, but it's the one that is the most detrimental if you don't identify it. And that's the Mike. That's this like legacy. The Mike is the long-standing trusted person who's been on the team, might be like your college roommate and bar buddy from way back in the day who's joined the team. And in the early days, it kind of worked. Sort of like a happy accident, as we call it in the People book, actually. It kind of works for a while, but the second you start trying to scale the organization, it all falls apart. You hit the ceiling and you can't make anything happen. So that is the hardest nut to crack, I think, for growing organizations, for visionaries to be able to make the tough call, because sometimes in those moments, they don't have the visionary or the integrator partner to help them out with that. So they're having to deal with those ugly people issues that are not their favorite because we want to have happy conversations with everybody. And so I think in your book, you do a really nice job of really just cutting to the chase and identifying you got to know that you got a mic. Everybody's got a mic. If you started your company from scratch, there's going to be a mic in there. That name might be Janet or somebody else, but it's being real about it and calling it out and making the tough call, which might mean that they don't have any seat on the accountability chart at some point. So I really like that you go there with that storytelling.
Well, I appreciate that. Everybody does have a mic. If you don't want a mic, you just simple answer is don't grow, and you might not have a mic.
Right, but I said no entrepreneur ever, I don't want to grow. So
That's
that's
right.
sort of
I
not
know.
a great solution, right?
Exactly. Hey, I want to ask you this. The title of the show is Unlocking Moves, where we try to uncover some key pivotal moment in your career. Can you tell us a little bit about what your unlocking move or moves may have been? I have an idea,
Hmm.
but I'd love your thoughts.
Gosh, I think just leaving the financial industry. For those of you who don't know me and don't know my history, I spent, 17, 18 years in the financial industry. And it can be very uncommon when you've got like the Series 7 and 24 and you're like sort of like could get handcuffed to an industry because of achieving certain credentials or whatever, and to let that go and take the risk of doing something completely different. I think I was just at a realization where I knew that for me to become who I was meant to be, not even having anything to do with how I made a living or whatnot, it was really the potential of who I wanted to be and making a difference with a group of people that I really loved and believed in, and a mission that I could get behind. And so to kind of just be willing to, figuratively, if you think of like a shelf that has all the things you've ever achieved, and you wipe your hand across it and you put it in the garbage can and you're like, okay, well, that was my former life. It served a purpose at the time, but I'm going to leave that behind me, not because I didn't love it. It was great. But I was ready to do something very different, and to leave that and to come to EOS. And so that was unlocking a part of me, letting go of something again that had served me well, but wasn't going to serve me well forward moving. Felt pretty good. And I look back on that, and I think I'm really glad that I made that choice, because being part of EOS and the way that I am as the integrator is my most favorite professional thing I've ever done.
Wow. Congrats to you for making that move. So many people are in a 20-year career and feel locked into it for whatever reasons, financial or otherwise, and you recognize your maybe bigger aspirations, not maybe aspirations, but bigger shift in what you wanted your career to be, and you made the shift. And so I can't tell you congrats enough because I have a lot of conversations with people who are afraid to make that move. So hopefully you've inspired hundreds of people to consider the same type of thing for themselves.
Oh, thanks, Kurt.
Well, we're at the time part of the show where I like to play the listener's advocate. And if I've got Kelly Knight here in a one-on-one conversation, I want to ask her, something that everyone has got on their mind. I've
Yeah.
got to ask you this. I'll ask it in maybe two ways. Number one is, what kind of a pain in the ass is it for Mark O'Donnell to work with? Or what are some of your struggles that you and Mark have in your partnership?
Well, I might be the pain in the ass that he has to work with, right? Because I'm the one that could probably be accused of moving too slow or being like the negative or, like whatnot. But he's really a delight to work with. I really mean that. He really is. He's just the neatest guy. He is very open-minded and he's a great learner and a curious personality. And so I really don't have anything to criticize him on. It's just it's like a marriage. There's a relationship and you have to work on it. And we have our moments when maybe he wants to run faster than I do. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, we might want to bring the team along. And so that requires just a bit of restraint. And so sometimes that's the thing is I'll just remind him that we can't go anywhere without a team behind us to make it all come together and that everybody plays a really important role, even if it can be frustrating sometimes. The things that can feel slow, legal compliance, technicalities of things in HR or whatnot, but they are important too. So I would say that's just very normal visionary integrator stuff. Nothing unusual there, but he's just a delight. And anybody who doesn't know Mark, you should, he does all kinds of videos and he's very funny. There's a new video that's going to be coming out that is absolutely hilarious. A little clue, he's wearing animals. His outfit is all animals. It's pretty funny. So
Right,
look for
nice.
that pretty soon.
We will look for that. And I want to touch on something you just said, and that's every relationship has its ups and downs, and you got to continue to work at it. Just like your marriage, just like any important relationship, you've got to continue to work at it to make it successful. And I think too many people think it's just supposed to be, easy peasy, and they get frustrated, and like a
Mhm.
like a divorce in a marriage. But
Yeah, and I would just say have total and utter respect for, again, that gift that your visionary is to an integrator, right? Because we have things maybe we want to do and we feel like the visionary holds us back sometimes. So it goes both ways. But having real respect, like I so honor the gift that he has that I don't have. It's not my God-given talent, but I really look at him with admiration and a lot that he does. And I think he probably does that from time to time, maybe with me, but that's the really beautiful piece is I don't try to be him and he's not trying to be me. We're just really trying to be the best VI duo that we possibly can to lead EOS worldwide and our communities to where we want to go. And if you could just have that really humble confidence, it goes a long way.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. So I've got one more question. It's kind of a trick question. And
Ah,
that is, tell me one question that you're never asked, and either you secretly wish they would, or maybe you're kind of glad they don't.
oh, that's a really good question. I don't know that I've ever thought about that. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. You stumped me.
Well,
It's rare.
we've already covered mac and cheese, which I know is a big favorite topic of yours. But why don't we tell me about your love for the water?
Oh, yeah. So I grew up in Michigan, which is a Great Lakes state. So there's water wonderfully around us. And I grew up on a lake. And so I just have a connection to water. I love boating, swimming, kayaking, canoeing, paddle boarding, you name it, anything. I just love it. It's part of my childhood. I think growing up on it, it just created an early stage. Like I didn't know that people didn't have access to water, right? Like I grew up in the Midwest. What no. So now wherever we go, we seek out water. I mean, it could be a river or a stream or the ocean. I just have a real connection to it. I love taking clarity breaks around water. There's something about it that feeds my soul and it creates creativity in my thinking. So that's how I will often take breaks around anything that I can find that's water.
Well, thank you for sharing. Kelly just talked about a clarity break, which is a way to disconnect from everything else that's going on in your world and just gain some peace and clarity, as it states. And getting out into nature is one of the best ways to do that, in my opinion.
Yeah. So can I ask you a question?
Let's go.
So I'm gonna turn the tables on you. So since our last conversation 4 years ago, what's the most important thing that you've learned?
What's the most important thing that I've learned since our last conversation? Man, this is a great question. And I'm going to relate to an article I wrote about 6 months or so ago about struggles that we had in our business in 2023. And that is my learning is the more that I have faith that things will work out one way or the other. And in my case, it's in my God. I have faith in God that things will work out. The better things work out for me. And the more I pour into others, the more the universe or God or something pays into me. What I mean by that is there was a time where I was so self-absorbed about my own challenges, my own issues with our company or whatever. And I would be on a call with Kelly trying to figure out what could I sell Kelly to get myself out of this trouble. But what I learned is the more I seek to serve Kelly, how can I help her achieve her goals? Then it made me a more authentic, because that's who I am. And it seemed to like shift in magical ways that the universe started paying it forward for me. And you talked about earlier about this concept of abundance versus scarcity. And it's something my business partner, Velvet Schmitz, talks about a lot. And I can't say enough good things about that mindset.
That makes me think you have a whole new podcast series behind Unlocking Moves. There's a whole thing there that would be really interesting to explore.
It's funny. We've done some, I say, greatest hits or some of our podcasts where we pull out some of the best quotes and sound bites, and those are some of the best ones. Overcoming adversity is a theme that we've seen a lot. Having this serving others is a topic that comes up a lot. So thank you for that. Maybe you can't give me more work to do. I'm already visionary, so I'm already doing too many things. But
well, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me back. I always enjoy our conversations, and I just wish you all the very best with all your other episodes in the future.
Kelly, thank you so much for being here. On that note, we're going to wrap this puppy up. Please go like and subscribe Unlocking Moves wherever you consume your podcast. We've got video versions on YouTube and audio wherever, Apple, Spotify, you name it. Kelly, thanks so much for joining us. Can't wait to see you and enjoy some mac and cheese here at the end of the summer.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it.
If you're an entrepreneur and you think you might have outgrown a member of your team, or maybe you've got a mic, as we talked about in Who's Your Mic, check out this quiz at who'syourmic.com/quiz. That's who'syourmic.com/quiz.